Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery. Thank you for being with us. And today I want to say thank you for being with me. Another solo episode here on the Growth Over Goals podcast. Just you and I hanging out today, and we're talking about a very important topic that will be more relevant to some than it will be to others. However, I do think today's topic is inclusive and relevant. We are all, at some point in our lives, leading up. Today, emerging leaders, we're focused on you. If you're in the first 5 to 10 years of your career, or you're just new to an organization, maybe you're in the first 5 to 10 years of a new role or a new position, or maybe you're just thinking about how you serve people in your organization well, today's topic will be inclusive and relevant to you. We're talking about the topic of leading up, this idea of leading your leaders. I love what Andy Stanley says on this topic. He says, your organization will never be what it could be without honest and upward communication. In other words, your ability to lead up now will determine your ability to move up later. Craig Rochelle said this, the biggest myth in leadership is that you have to be in charge to lead. Craig then talked about two types of power, personal power and positional power. In the old days, you had to have positional power to lead. In other words, you had to have a title, you had to have a certain type of rank. But in today's world, we know it's about personal power. Personal power comes from following through, from serving, from going above and beyond the call of duty. In most organizations today, it's the person with the greatest level of personal power who actually has the influence. You can lead and make a difference from anywhere when you have great personal power. I want to talk about two things that matter today when you focus on leading up. Now, the reality is there's a lot that you could focus on when it comes to leading up. There's many ways that you could serve people who've been there longer or who have more experience or tenure. But if you want to grow your influence, I want you to take these two things into consideration. The first is building a culture of honor around you. We all have a culture that we build around us. We're known for certain types of things. If you're an emerging leader, I'd have you consider building a culture of honor. This is something I didn't do well as a young leader. I found myself in situations where I really wanted to speak, I wanted to share, I wanted to teach, I wanted to train. I was the type of leader that you would refer to as overexposed and underdeveloped. In fact, I was out front too often. I was too often teaching or training. I was too often speaking in meetings. I need to do a better job of listening and observing. Let's remember, as emerging leaders, when we listen and observe, we actually honor people in the room who have more experience or tenure. I think honor also means that we ask more questions. Leadership has far more to do with asking questions than it does giving answers. We all love the person who has a curious spirit, who wants to learn, who comes prepared to meetings. I love what Craig Rochelle says on the topic of honor. He says, when we honor people in public, it results in influence in private. Maybe you're an emerging leader who really wants to share some feedback with your supervisor, your boss, your manager. There's a difficult conversation you want to have, or there's some things that you want to point out. I would just have you consider the timing and the setting of when you do that. I think so many times in my leadership journey, I failed to honor my leaders. I was quick to speak. I was quick to share. Too often I was sharing things in public that should have been shared in private. And it was just small stuff. It was feedback. It was ideas. But let's just be thoughtful as emerging leaders on when and how we share feedback and we talk about things that matter. When we honor people in public, it results in influence in private. Finally, we believe this in our organization: respect is earned, honor is given. Respect is earned, honor is given. I just want to give honor to people around me. I want to be able to sit at a table with somebody who disagrees with me, who sees the world differently than I do, who has a different background, a different perspective, and still listen to that person, consider that person, be kind to that person. I want to honor that person. Respect over time is earned, but honor's given. Let's build a culture of honor around us as we continue to lead up. Let's be curious. Let's ask questions. Let's make sure that we're people who listen and observe well. Number two, I would have you consider initiative as you lead up. If you want to gain trust and influence, I would have you consider taking more initiative in your organization. Here's a great question that you need to ask yourself when you're leading up. How often And in what ways am I taking responsibility outside of my authority? In other words, are you doing things that you're not being asked to do? Are you cleaning up the mess that you didn't make? Are you completing that project that you weren't assigned to? If you want to have influence others don't have, you have to do things others don't do. I'm going to have you write this down. This is such an important phrase to remember as we continue to lead up. Bloom where you're planted. If you want to have more influence, bloom where you're planted. In other words, treat your current role as if it's the last role that you'll ever have. Treat your current job as if it's the last job that you'll ever have. Treat that project that you're working on as if it's the last project that you'll be given. If you want to have influence others don't have, you got to do things that others don't do. Senior leaders will take notice of your initiative. Finally, I'll say this about the topic of leading up. This is something that senior leaders need to teach more often. Again, Andy Stanley said it best. Your organization will never be what it could be without upward and honest conversation. We so often think about leadership in terms of top down. The reality is, if you have influence, you can lead. And we need more emerging leaders, young leaders, people who are newer to our organization or who are simply newer to their role to feel like they have a voice, to feel like they can share, to feel like they can lead and influence inside of the organization. Let's continue to lead up and make a difference. This has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. Thank you for hanging with me on this solo episode. I hope that you found some value in today's conversation. Whether you're an emerging leader, a veteran leader, let's continue to talk about leading up, to focus on leading up and to lead up and make a difference for the people that we get to serve and impact. God bless you. Be well. Make it a great day.